If you didn't get to make it to the convention, AMSN is extending the convention experience all the way through November with the virtual convention extension. Check it out on the website at amsn.org.
On this episode of med-surg Moments, within the specialty of med-surg nursing, the answer to many of our challenges can only come with change. And change only happens when our voices reach the ears of those who ensure the laws that we live by. Joining us today are Yalanda Comeaux and Michael Urton.
Speaking to someone on the local level to get the word out, to understand. I've had nurses tell me they didn't know there was a shutdown or what was it all about. It's going to affect our patients and it's going to affect us as individuals and our workforce.
But how can med-surg nurses take the next step and get involved?
That really is the starting place, is figuring out what the topic or topics that you really want to be involved. One of the biggest shocks that I found when I started going to the state legislature is how much knowledge is not there. You go to members of the...
They're not going to turn you away. They're very approachable. Go up and talk to them. Let them know what's happening on your unit. And I do remember when I went to the Hill, the first thing they said to me when they sat down with me was like, well, so what do nurses do?
I wanted to ask, from your perspective, which legislative issues are most prevalent to med-surg nurses? This is Mary Tess,
Sam,
Eric,
Marcella, LA,
And Sydney. Welcome to med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses. We're proud med-surg nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey.
Within the specialty of med-surg nursing, the answer to many of our challenges can only come with change. And change only happens when our voices reach the ears of those who ensure the laws that we live by will protect and support us as nurses. But change never happens on its own. You've probably heard the terms advocacy and legislation many times and felt as though that's someone else's agenda. But the truth is, advocacy is about you. It brings real struggles, challenges, and expertise of med-surg nurses to the front lines where decisions are made on your behalf. AMSN helps you carry your voice forward to drive policies that protect patients, support safe staffing, and strengthen med-surg practice. So how can you as a med-surg nurse go about educating yourself on government affairs, and what has AMSN been doing lately to advocate for the med-surg profession? That's what this episode is all about. Joining us today are Yalanda Comeaux and Michael Urton. Yalanda is board liaison to Advocacy and Legislative Committee and a member of the AMSN Board of Directors. She's a nurse with 30 years of experience spanning a wide array of specialties. Yalanda currently works as a clinical nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. Among her academic credentials, she holds a Master of Jurisprudence in Health, Law, and Policy from Loyola, University of Chicago School of Law. Yalanda is a certified medical surgical registered nurse and a self-published author of RN Bound, a guide for becoming a successful nurse, published in 2016. Dr. Michael Urton is a board-certified adult-gerontology clinical nurse specialist and is currently the Director of Advanced Practice Nursing at Duke University Health System in Durham, North Carolina. He is Vice Chair of the AMSN Advocacy and Legislative Committee. Dr. Urton holds a faculty appointment at East Carolina University and retired from the U.S. Navy Nurse Corps with the rank of Lieutenant Commander. Yalanda and Mike, thank you for all your hard work for AMSN. We're so excited to welcome you to med-surg Moments.
Thanks, Mary Tess. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really excited to talk about this topic.
I'm elated to be here.
Well, you both actively advocate for the nursing profession, and it's easy to understand that in the busy day-to-day of the nursing profession, it can be challenging to keep up with what's happening in Washington. Yalanda, beyond listening to this episode of med-surg Moments, how can med-surg nurses go about educating themselves on the latest in government affairs?
First of all, starting off, who are their representatives in their state, local representatives. They are more approachable in terms of communicating with them and letting them know the issues that they're having in their local systems. Speaking to someone on the local level to get the word out, to understand what's happening in healthcare. What are the challenges? What are the issues? What's happening? What's going on? Are the facilities safe? Are our patients safe? Is the staff safe? And they can go to the floor. They can create bills to help our systems become more in line with agencies and become safer for our patients and for staff. Getting involved locally, going to town hall meetings, speaking to representatives, signing petitions, even running for an office, doing community work. And you can learn a lot by networking and learning what our representatives are doing, things that are important to you.
Mayor Tess, I can't believe I'm even going to suggest this, but social media is such a powerful tool in this category with the way that hashtags work, with the ability to follow influential leaders in these different areas, regardless of what platform you use. While there's all kinds of craziness that may exist out there, there are also really strong and powerful voices who are really happy to help filter out all of the noise, whether it's your particular specialty, whether it's federal issues, state level issues. Most state nursing associations also have social media accounts where you can stay up to date, lobbyists. So I think there's a lot of really powerful tools, Google search words and updates and things that can also help that stuff come to you when it does feel overwhelming. Having that information come directly to you in a curated way can also really help that trickle of information to keep you learning more about particular topics.
And I agree with Mike. We have a robust set of nurses right now. They're young, they're vibrant, they stay on social media because right now there's a shutdown. Healthcare is a huge current issue today. And there's a government shutdown that's been going on for well over a month. And many nurses don't even realize it. I've had nurses tell me they didn't know there was a shutdown or what was it all about. Our novice nurses, senior nurses, we have to educate those who are coming along right behind us and let them know what's happening. It's going to affect us in many, many ways. It's going to affect our patients and it's going to affect us as individuals and our workforce. So these are the things that they need to stay abreast to in terms of being passionate about our care that we give our patients, stability of our jobs.
Now, I really do agree. Social media plays a big role, I think. I follow a lot of state representatives who are nurses. I learn from them. But also, I wanted to ask because AMSN, we have a lot of resources. We have resources that we can use. But how can med-surg nurses take the next step and get involved in advocating for the nursing profession, actively being involved? I say that because at some point, sometimes I have all this information in my head and I'm like, how do I really go and visit a legislator? Can you give us some tips of how we can be more actively involved in advocating?
Before we do that, I really do want to emphasize the first step. You will not feel comfortable taking any of these additional steps, talking to any of these people, if you don't feel confident in your knowledge. And so the first step, that educating yourself, however you do that, whether it's reading, learning, listening to news, following influential people, it really is the first step, whether it's workplace violence, whether it's staffing, reimbursement issues, whatever the topic is that you're passionate about. Because if you don't have that, it's not enough to just know the steps or know how to reach out or who your legislator is, because you're not going to feel comfortable talking about it and recognizing the power that you bring. Without having a confident voice, that voice can only carry you so far. So that really is the starting place, is figuring out what the topic or topics that you really want to be involved in. You don't have to be the end-all be-all expert, but you do have to feel a little bit better about it. I'll also say that people know more than they think they do. I don't think we always recognize how little others know. You talked about some of the nurses in the legislature. There are so few of them. One of the biggest shocks that I found when I started going to the state legislature is how much knowledge is not there. You go to members of the health committee and you assume they're on the health committee. They must know a lot of things. And then you find out that they're a banker. They own a farm out in Western North Carolina, and they mean well, but their only knowledge of healthcare truly may come from their own visits to their general practitioner. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just something that really never connected. You're assuming these people that are making powerful decisions must know things, but they have to know everything about everything. Traffic, highway safety, all these things. So I think that's that first piece of being able to go in there. That said, my recommendation about a first step is always thinking much more locally. And it's where the AMSN Advocacy and Legislative Committee is shifting a little bit more. Before, we were talking about federal issues and lobbying and going to Washington, and we still support some of those things. But I think our big push right now is helping nurses recognize that advocacy and a voice starts at home. It starts on your unit, your department, your director, your CNO. So as things come out about concerns with staffing or new issues about workplace violence or safety, making those things hospital issues, making sure that you can use that voice to say, hey, chief nursing officer, this just came out from our professional organization. Could I get 15 minutes to be able to tell you a little bit about what I understand and what I'm seeing in my unit? Those are great because it can affect change much more rapidly. Policies can change, committees can be built, whereas laws take time, legislation takes time. So it can almost give you a chance to speak on a topic more quickly, hopefully impact change at a local level that means something to you as the nurse facing these challenges. And it also prepares you to help you, again, gain a level of confidence so that when you do step out to the state or you do send an email to your U.S. Senator, you already have practiced the conversation. So I think those are some really helpful first steps to build your confidence, network, meet people, and move your way through that.
I also want to add, join your shared governance committees, join your departmental committees. Go to your hospital meetings when the chief nurse executive is going to meet that day. Have a lunch and learn moment. They're not going to turn you away. They're very approachable. Go up and talk to them. Let them know what's happening on your unit and what they're saying and what they're doing and what they're supporting and how the hospital is going to support that and support the nurses at their establishment.
Mayor Tess, our organizations, many organizations, the chief nursing officer or the president of the hospital or the CEO will hold town halls. And what I find is they are rarely attended by staff nurses, by frontline staff of any type, nursing or otherwise. They really do relish questions. They're talking about budgets. They're talking about whatever insurance company that might be in your particular state, what's new with them and how that may or may not affect an organization. I think those kinds of things, when you start hearing about it, then you ask questions. And the few times that we have had staff nurses attend those, they ask questions that for the senior leaders may seem really basic, may seem really obvious, but I found them all very excited to answer that, excited about the engagement. And I hope that those nurses walked away with a little bit more perspective about how complex, how challenging our healthcare system is. It is not an easy world to navigate for anybody, our leaders, our staff, our patients. So that's the other thing that I've seen more recently was just how those events like that can be a great opportunity to both learn as well as to speak up on the things that people are passionate about.
I do remember when I went to the Hill, the first thing they said to me when they sat down with me was like, well, so what do nurses do? What do you guys do? It blew me away and I had to think. I was like, okay, let me start from the beginning. This is how it goes. This as a nurse.
It's so basic, right? It's something I wouldn't even think that would be a question.
So we have to tell them what we do. And from there, we can get the support.
It's so interesting. I'll tell you, perhaps we can talk about it every single minute of this. And then they will be like, oh, that is what you do. Wait till we break down the specialties. It will be like a whole day of conversation. But I really love how you guys shared your own experiences and tie it up to how we can scale it ourselves, how we can do it ourselves. I am very interested with the work that the AMSN Advocacy and Legislative Committee has been doing. I know you guys have been so busy this year, all these issues that we have. I tell you, when I go to my state legislator or to my representative, I always have my handouts. I have a folder. I have a red folder, which is my priority folder. These are my top 3. And then I have my other purple folder. These are the others if you have extra time. So Yalanda and Mike, the AMSN Advocacy and Legislative Committee has been busy this year. Can you give our listeners an overview of what you've accomplished this year?
It's been an interesting year as we've shifted the direction towards the membership and making sure that they have what they need to be more effective in using their voices and advocating both locally and at the state and national level. We've been trying to build the resource base that is on AMSN and both educational content as well as up-to-date resources on the topics that they might want to be concerned with. So that's one of the big things we've done. More recently, there's been a quarterly advocacy email newsletter that was created. We sent out our first version of that in July, and next edition should be coming out soon. So those are going out to members as well as being available on the website. Last month, we also released a webinar that was about this very topic on how to more effectively use your voice. And we did it in a case study format where we took the safe staffing standards or recommendations that came out more recently, and we used that to illustrate how a nurse might take those recommendations and advocate in some different ways in their organization, at their state, or with their federal representatives. So I think that's another thing that we're really excited about. The other thing that we're trying to do is to continue to support the AMSN signing on or being a part of the Nursing Community Coalition, which is a 64-member national nursing organization collective. So they have a number of things that they will sign on to letters in advocating for various causes, various topics, or letters to members of Congress or various committees. So Dr. Trish West, our chair, she is the one who represents our committee and our organization on that group. Going forward, we're looking at some more educational resources that will be available to staff and to help continue driving this topic of how I, as a staff nurse in a hospital on a unit, can advocate in different ways and what I can be doing. The things that we're talking about on this podcast right now.
Mike, we would be remiss if we didn't ask about staffing, especially with AMSN's release of the recommendations for safe, effective medical surgical nurse staffing standards. What's the latest legislative action update on safe patient staffing?
First, let me say I'm not an expert on these recommendations, so I definitely would encourage everyone to go back and listen to the podcast that was recorded in early July. I thought Monica Vanderzee and Christy Campo both did an excellent job on that topic. So if you haven't listened to that, please do. That said, the timing of this is so appropriate. There was national legislation released earlier this year. It was not bipartisan. It was released by Democrats in both the House and the Senate to try and establish some federal standards about safe staffing. That bill won't go anywhere, almost definitely, just in this political climate that we're in right now. But that's okay. And I think this really emphasizes an important topic. We certainly want to advocate as an organization or as a member for bills that are going to advance topics or issues that we're passionate about. But even that they may not advance, it doesn't make them not valuable to us. So there is state legislation on safe staffing in 4 states and being discussed in another 8 states. It is something that's being looked at every organization that is thinking about how to protect and maintain nurses. So having the language that shows up in this bill and use that as a conversation starter with your organization leadership or with your state legislators can be really, really useful, even if a particular national level bill is maybe not going to advance in a particular session. So that's the one thing I would say on that. Interestingly, one of the co-authors of the bill that was released in Congress was Senator Jeff Merkley, one of the few members of Congress with a direct connection, not a nurse, but his spouse is a nurse. And so I think, as we think about who else we can use to influence and connect with, that's another avenue. They may not be connected to healthcare directly, but they may have a really powerful connection that we can lean on and we can work with. The other thing that I want to mention about safe staffing standards is Joint Commission has gone from national patient safety goals to performance standards. And this change is more nuanced. It's kind of how the rules are presented. But more importantly, for the first time ever, effective staffing is one of those expectations that's coming out from Joint Commission. So we have this other really powerful agency that historically has driven patient safety, has driven quality care in organizations in a way that legislation can't always do because of how challenging it can be to pass and put into implementation. But when the Joint Commission says you got to do something, things happen. So AMSN is really well positioned with our recommendations as hospitals and states start looking for what should we be doing? What should those recommendations look like? It's nice for AMSN and its members to be able to point to this and say, hey, here we go. This is a document. It's well researched. It's a very great collection of steps that we should be taking. And we can kind of use that to carry forward and hopefully get some of that change in our own hospitals.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The bill that you mentioned, co-authored by Representative Merkley, I actually used that in an article that I wrote in LinkedIn. It's about the impact of professional nursing identity because it ties up with the Joint Commission. It has to be competent nursing. You have to be a competent nurse, but also staffing ratio does have an impact in that as well. I wanted to ask, from your perspective, which legislative issues are most prevalent to med-surg nurses at the moment? And what should listeners keep their eyes on?
We just talked about safe staffing and all those issues there. And healthcare reform is really, really something they should keep their eye on right now, personally and professionally. It is going to affect us immensely.
They're all important, right? That's the tricky part. They're all important to varying degrees, depending on who you are, where you live, what your specialty is, what your hospital looks like, and what state you happen to be in. We've spoken about budgets and healthcare funding, which are so critical. We've talked about safe staffing. I think the other big elephant in the room is workforce development. Where are our nurses going to come from in the future? Who's going to educate them? How are our faculty paid for? How are we encouraging people to choose nursing as a profession? And then how do we protect them once they're there? I think a lot of the legislation and stuff that we've talked about is about how to protect nurses once they're in the role. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done about how we're going to create nurses in the future. And currently, without having that being subsidized in some capacity by either the state or federal level to encourage people to go to school to become nurses, whether it's tuition discounts, how do we supplement faculty salaries because they are not competitive right now, which makes it not a viable choice for many senior nurses to even think about doing. So I think that's one of the big areas I'm interested in. It feels disconnected. It doesn't feel as pertinent to the nurse on the floor. But if you want to achieve a better nurse staffing ratio, then you need more nurses, and those nurses need to come from somewhere. And so we can't really fix one problem without fixing our workforce that's supposedly coming in to be there when we change our staffing ratio. So I think those things need to be talked about together.
Absolutely, Mike. And by saying that nurses should educate themselves on the Title VIII bill, and I was just ended from that.
Yes, and perhaps more to come, and look it up. It's very interesting, but I'll share. I read in an article, by 2030, we need 1.2 million nurses. 1.2 million nurses. That's what I saw in that article. And I'm like, I'm going to encourage all the high school students to come and be part of nursing. You guys have been so amazing. We're out of time. Yalanda and Mike, it's truly been an inspiration, an honor, and a great pleasure for having you in this episode of Med-surg Moments.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It was great being here.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of Med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
In the meantime, we encourage you to subscribe to Med-surg Moments wherever you listen to podcasts.
To reach us, use hashtag MedSurgMoments on your social posts.
Or send us an email at amsnpod@amsn.org.
That's AMSNPOD@amsn.org.
We are all AMSN members, and if you love med-surg moments, we invite you to become a member of AMSN. You can learn more at www.amsn.org. Finally, the content within the med-surg Moments podcast represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
Until next time, this is Eric,
Mary Tess,
Sam.
Kelly, Marcella,
and Sydney. And always remember, med-surg moments is a moment in our lives and a moment in our med-surg careers that makes a huge difference.